Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. I've used a different voice this time, so hopefully it sounds better. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Enjoy!
The manhwa starts off with a message from the Absolute, telling the MC that a random wish of his has been granted. We are shown him on the ground, looking confused and angry. The system tells him that he's now a part of the Knight of Blood and Iron. He recognizes the name, saying that is the same name of the book he was reading last night. He suddenly gets a jolt of energy, realizing that this could be one of those web novels where he has been transported to another world. Although he starts wondering why he is waking up face down on a dirt road. He slowly gets up, complaining about the cold. He realizes that there is also something wrong with his jaw, and the system tells him that because he had been laying on the ground for so long, his jaw had fallen out of place. The system also inserts a laugh at the end. He smacks the system away, saying the alerts are ticking him off. He starts thinking to himself about who he has replaced in the book that he has been transported to. Just as he is about to arrive at an answer, the name Master Lloyd is called from behind him. A good-looking and well-built man is standing behind him, asking him to return to the manor. The knight's name is revealed to be Javier Ashrahan. Lloyd tries to jog his memory, trying to remember a Lloyd who had a knight by the name of Javier. It dawns on him that he has replaced the hooligan, Lloyd Frontera. Javier looks at Lloyd blankly, saying he has never called him a hooligan before, but it is good that he is self-aware at least. They arrive at the manor, and Lloyd tells Javier that he doesn't remember what happened the night before. He tells him that Lloyd started drinking in a pub, got drunk and destroyed the furniture in said pub, and then proceeded to pass out on the way back to the manor. Javier said that his lordship was worried about Lloyd, so they sent him. Lloyd thought to himself that the floor is cold, and that he really wished they had an ondol, which is a traditional Korean underfloor heating system. Javier says he needs to leave to report what Lloyd has done, but as he is leaving, he asks Javier if their family has a lot of debt. Javier is confused at why he is asking this, and then closes the door. Because the world he is in now is a book he finished the last chapter of, the night before teleporting. He knows what happens to Lloyd. He also knows that their family is in a lot of debt at the moment. In the first part of the book, the Baron and Baroness fall prey to an evil conman. They lose all their land and finally commit self-dead. Lloyd then becomes a beggar that drinks all day and night until he coughs up blood and dies. Lloyd jumps up, saying that he will not suffer the same fate as the Lloyd in the book. It's the next day, and Lloyd's mother is asking if he broke things at the pub last night. He thinks to himself that he was reading a book, but he begrudgingly says yes. Marbella begs him to apologize to the pub owner. Lloyd must now fix a problem that the original Lloyd made. So he agrees. This surprises Javier and Lloyd's mom, as this isn't something the original Lloyd would do at all. We can see Lloyd walking into town, and everyone get uncomfortable. A child watching him from his window is told to avert his gaze and shut the window. Lloyd tries to not pay it too much attention and asks Javier why he is accompanying him. Javier says it is to protect the villagers in case he decides to act up again. Lloyd thinks to himself that he needs to get rid of his family's debt so that he can live peacefully as the heir to a country and live a comfortable life until old age. He wonders if he has any skills to help him do that, so he opens his skills, but he only has 2 useless ones, so he starts swatting at the skill window. Since Lloyd has only been in the world for a day, he doesn't know where the pub was, so he walks straight past it. Javier asks him if he was lying when he said he wanted to apologize. Lloyd said that he just forgot where the pub was, but he doesn't buy it. He walks in the door, and Javier thinks to himself that Lloyd has been off since last night. He says it's as if he is a completely different person. We are then shown the aftermath of original Lloyd's visit to the pub. He sits down on a chair and bows his head in shame and says that he is incredibly sorry for the damages he caused. Because this was so out of character for Lloyd, the pub owner assumes high alert mode. Lloyd tries to say sorry in the character of the original Lloyd, and this seems to make the pub owner calm down. On the walk home, Lloyd says that even though he apologized, the pub owner didn't seem very happy. Javier explains that everything he broke costed a lot of money, and since he came to apologize with nothing but a sorry attitude, it didn't cheer him up too much. Lloyd thinks to himself that paying the pub owner back would be impossible because of the financial situation his family is in. Javier adds that the pub owner's mother is sick with mild frostbite since winter. So, he has every right to not be in a happy mood at the moment. He thinks to himself that the one fireplace he saw wasn't enough to heat up the whole building, unless they had ondol floors, of course. He stopped walking and a bulb flicked on, inside his head. He realizes that ondol floors haven't been invented yet. If he builds them in this world, they will definitely fetch for a high price. It is revealed that in his life outside of the book, he was a college student, majoring in civil engineering. He clenches his fists, preparing himself for what's to come. He turns around and tells Javier that he needs to speak to the pub owner. Just then, a system notification popped up, saying his true journey has just begun. An RP counter is also introduced, and the system tells Lloyd that he can earn RP by improving relationships with key characters. Just then, a bar appears on top of Javier. The bar tells Lloyd that his approval rating from Javier is made as 30. To try get some approval points back, he tells Javier that he's a really good-looking guy. However, it backfires, and he tells him that he already knows he is good-looking, making the approval rating go down to Magadis 31. We are back at the bar, and Lloyd is finalizing the deal with the pub owner. He says that he will write off all the construction fees because of the property he damaged. The pub owner looks at him suspiciously. Lloyd thinks to himself that he needs to use dirty tactics in order to win the deal. So he pulls off an Oscar-winning impression of original Lloyd to pressure the pub owner into signing, and it miraculously works. He is happy to get his first job, while the system insults him, calling him absolute garbage. Lloyd and Javier arrive at the construction zone. Javier asks him if he is trying to cause more trouble again. Lloyd promises to make them smile. He tells him the pub owner and his mother will be smiling from ear to ear after he has finished construction. He laughs to himself, saying that those very smiles will be the foundation of his money-making scheme. We are then shown a montage of Lloyd getting the foundation ready. Then he starts on the traditional timber frame. After that, he uses clay that was dug up from the river to complete the walls. After the work, Lloyd is shown on the ground gasping for air. Javier exclaims that the construction didn't take as long as he thought. He wonders to himself where he learned how to build, and if he is really going to honor the contract with the pub owner. However, he is still suspicious of the infamous hooligan, Lloyd Frontera. Lloyd's shaky body gets up and gets ready to swing an axe, but Javier stops him. He asks Lloyd how he needs to cut the wood, and in one motion he throws all the wood in the air and cuts them all as they fall to the ground in perfect planks. Lloyd shows his approval with a thumbs up. He is surprised by Javier's swordsmanship. Lloyd asks him if he can help him with some digging too. Javier is dumbfounded at Lloyd for not even thanking him and giving him more work, calling him hopeless. Lloyd tries to manipulate Javier into doing more work by telling him that he knows Javier is curious about the structure he is making, and they could save a lot of time if they started digging together. Javier has an irritated look on his face, but admits that he is curious if Lloyd will stick to the contract. In the next panel, we can see both of them working hard with shovels in the ground. And in a matter of days, the construction was complete. Javier asks what the markings on the front is, and Lloyd tells him that the markings are his logo. He gets the fire burning at the bottom of the house. We can see the pub owner and his mother in the house laying on the heated floor. The pub owner's mother exclaims that she can feel all her stiff joints being relaxed. We can see the pub owner feeling the floor and says it feels like magic. He says he is very grateful for his cooperation because it had been a long time since he had seen his mother smile like that. Javier realizes that this is exactly what Lloyd said would happen. He starts to question if the Lloyd in front of him is the real Lloyd. Javier looks at the happy faces of the pub owner and his mother and smiles. Javier's approval rating increases by 2 points. The system pops up and tells Lloyd that he has earned 36 RP for improving his relationship slightly with a key character. Lloyd tells Javier that he is probably thinking that he isn't that much of a disappointment, but Javier looks away, telling him he is making up lies. He thinks to himself that he definitely lost money on this job. But that doesn't matter, because he can now showcase his workmanship and construction skills. A few days later, we can see a line forming outside the ondol. Everyone wants to know what heated floors feel like. Lloyd asks a man walking out if he wants an ondol in his own home. But the villagers still do not trust Lloyd. He tells everyone that at the price he is asking for, he is practically giving them away. Just then, Lloyd's father appears, asking him what he is doing with a stern look on his face. It is revealed that he has an approval rating of -20. Lloyd and his father are now back at the manor, eating together. His father breaks the awkward silence by asking him what prank he is trying to pull. Lloyd blankly explains that the pub owner ordered an ondol, so he built one for him. His father asks if other people are making orders as well. He closes his eyes in disapproval and says that the villagers are people they need to look after, and they cannot be taken advantage of. Lloyd's father says he won't tolerate Lloyd trying to scam them. Lloyd answers by saying that he wasn't planning on scamming anyone. It has become painstakingly clear to him that no one, even his own father, trusts the words that he says. He gets up to leave the table, but Lloyd's father asks him if he is doing all this because of their financial situation. He tells his son that he mustn't get himself involved and that he has a plan to get them out of trouble. But Lloyd knows he is lying. His father is just trying to keep a brave face in front of him. He tells his father to not give up on him because he isn't giving up on himself either. As he is walking in the hallway, he bumps into the moneylenders that are partly responsible for the situation they are in. They confront Lloyd's father on some late payments and ask him when he is going to give them their money. They start to threaten him by saying he needs to start selling the items in his house, and we can see Lloyd peeking through the door. He has a devilish grin on his face. After eavesdropping on the conversation, Lloyd is checking out his RP window and looks to see what he can do with it. A window pops up telling him that he can gain abilities by spending RP. Just then, the system starts discovering abilities that Lloyd has because of his engineering knowledge. Skills like hydraulics and structural mechanics are found. The system sarcastically says that he knows more than he looks, and Lloyd claps back by saying he has a scholarship. 2 skills show up: basic surveying and basic design. Now that he can afford the skills, Lloyd goes ahead and buys them both, and his eyes start to shine green. Bro is the next Green Lantern. He looks out, and he can see the layout of the dirt, trees, and grass. He taps his other skill, and we can see him drawing a house with his fingers on the skill window. Lloyd is excited because construction will be a lot faster now, but he is concerned if he will be enough to cover all the projects. He wishes he had some modern-day machinery to speed up the process. Just then a window pops up saying that if he wants, he can pick a summon from the summon game. Lloyd gets annoyed that he doesn't have enough RP yet, but starts to get excited when he thinks about the time he will save by using a dragon or other big and strong monsters. He needs RP, and to get that, he needs to get key characters to like him. We switch characters and can see the moneylenders pressuring Baron Frontera. The fat one exclaims that if he wants to sell his wife and her ladies too, he knows somewhere where they could fetch a hefty sum. Baron is disgusted by his remark, but just then, Lloyd enters the room saying that just because they owe him money, he doesn't have to be rude. The fat money lender jumps back in shock. He tells Lloyd to get out as they are having a grown-ups conversation, but he interrupts rudely, telling him to shut up and give him the warrant. The money lenders look at him confused. Lloyd states a clause from the Royal Family and Nobility Act, stating that all nobles can ask visitors for an entry warrant, and if they aren't able to display one, upon questioning, they can be kicked out. The 2 money lenders accuse him of making up lies. Lloyd counters by saying that they can both find out if he is lying or telling the truth. He calls Javier into the room and tells him to cut an arm off each of the trespassers. Javier makes his way to the moneylenders, and they both start to panic. They run off with their tail in between their legs. Lloyd then plops a sack of money on his father's desk. He said that the money could pay off that month's interest. His dad tells Lloyd that extorting money from the villagers is terrible behavior. But before he finishes his sentence, Javier speaks up and reassures Lord Baron that all the construction work that has been paid for will be completed. Javier asks Lloyd where he learnt about such a law, and he admits that he always thought Lloyd was the ignorant type. Lloyd just says that he picked it up from somewhere. We are shown a scene that happened in the original book. Javier is seen looking down on the dead Baron and Baroness who committed self-die. We can see the moneylenders come from behind and prepare to dig up the bodies to sell them for profit, and that's when Javier utters the clause from the Royal and Nobility Act. He then proceeds to cut all their heads off and is found not guilty by the judge. We are back to the present, and a window pops up, showing that Lloyd gained 60 RP for improving his relationship with a key character, which leaves his total RP at 61. The scene changes, and we can see Lloyd standing in an open area. He opens the summon game window, and it shows him that it costs 50 RP to have one turn. He presses start, and a green light flashes in front of him. Gears start whirring together and create a circle. More details are added to the circle, and Lloyd is amazed at what he is seeing, until we change perspective and can see that the magic circle is tiny. He also complains that it is very noisy. Something starts to pull at the magic circle, and out pops a hamster. Lloyd is not impressed. The hamster looks up with a joyful grin, and Lloyd says that the game is a dud, while looking at the poor little hamster with such disgust. This upsets the cute hamster, and it starts to make loud noises, almost as if it is shouting at him, but can't speak English. Lloyd somehow understands what the hamster is saying, and Lloyd asks the hamster if he isn't a dud. He asks it if he can shoot acorns out of its mouth. The hamster waves its arms in the air and spits out what looks like a paper and a packet out of its mouth. The paper tells him to give the hamster, which is named Podong in the note, lots of love and attention. It also contains a manual to the seeds Podong spat out. If he feeds the hamster a seed, it will change size. The red ones make him grow for a maximum of 12 hours. The blue seed makes him shrink back to its normal size, and he must give the hamster a blue seed before the 12-hour threshold of the red seed is met. He wonders how big the hamster can grow to, so he feeds Podong a red seed and says that if it can grow to a human size, it would be quite helpful in digging. Podong emits a bright light and starts to grow in size. The hamster smacks Lloyd in the face while growing bigger. He looks up and sees a 30-feet hamster. Podong is happy that Lloyd is seeing his true potential now. He demonstrates his skill by digging a hole, then rolling it all flat, storing all the excess dirt in his mouth, and then spitting it out into a solid rock. Lloyd clenches his fist in triumph as he has finally found heavy equipment to aid him in his future construction ventures. Walking back to his room, he thinks to himself about Podong, and that he can't be seen with the hamster how he is now. People will start to get suspicious. So, he decides to start carrying a summoning book wherever he goes, so it looks like Podong is just a normal summon. He congratulates himself on his own genius. His next step is to find labor for his construction project now. It's the next day, and we can see Lloyd in front of a group of men, all carrying shovels. They complain that he called them out when it was so hot. Lloyd gets agitated as they are basically soldiers who are getting paid to do nothing, as there haven't been any raids in years. He wonders why the Baron hasn't gotten rid of them yet, but he is grateful that they are all still around, because he can use them to work in his project. He shouts in a commanding tone. He points to a pile of clay he says he spent all night digging up, although it was Podong who did it. Lloyd tells the men that he wants them to move all the clay to the construction site. The soldiers are overjoyed to help him. Sarcasm at its finest, they all pull a sour face and complain that it will take too much time. Just then, someone from behind asks Lloyd what he is doing. It's the senior knight in Lord Frontera's barony, Newman. But he expected Newman to confront him. Lloyd quickly explains that they have 3 knights in their land, the lowest being Newman, then Bayern, and then Javier. He explains that in the book, when the state falls into ruin, Javier and the Bayern remained loyal until the end. But Neumann betrays the Baron and runs, because he actually sells information of the Baron to the con men, which eventually leads the Baron to gain a huge amount of debt. Lloyd shoots him a bombastic side eye. Newman explains that Lloyd is asking his honorable men to cover themselves in dirt, and as their commander, he can't tolerate it. Lloyd says to himself in his head that Newman is just mad that he is making money that could help pay the Baron's debt. He tells him that he has his father's permission, and that if he doesn't let him use his men, he will teach him a lesson. This seems to strike a nerve in the commander Newman, because his face begins to turn red from all the anger and frustration he's feeling. Lloyd takes a step forward and throws dirt at Newman. This seems to strike yet another nerve, and Newman warns him that he just insulted his honor as a knight. Lloyd tells Newman to bring it on and points his deadly shovel at his head. Neumann tells Lloyd that he will regret messing with him. We change scenes and see Javier talking to Lloyd. He says that the duel with Newman will be held in 1 month's time. He asks if he is confident he can win. Lloyd responds by saying of course not. He says Newman is a low-level sword expert who can use mana heart, and he is just a nobody. He then proceeds to critique Javier for even asking such a stupid question, which gets Javier quite annoyed. Javier thinks to himself that Lloyd might have gone back to his hooligan ways, but it was all too calculated. Lloyd asked the Baron to separate him and Lloyd so that Newman could get in a fight with Lloyd. Lloyd breaks Xavier's train of thought by asking him if he could teach him how to use a sword. Xavier looks him dead in the eye and says no. Lloyd annoyingly asks him why he is being stingy, and Xavier answers by saying his only job is to watch him, not train him. He also adds that if a person like Lloyd learned how to use a sword, everyone else would be in greater danger. But Lloyd has a trick up his sleeve. He asks Javier if he would still be willing to teach him how to use a sword if he told him the cure to his insomnia. Javier is stunned he knows about his sleep problems. We get an explanation of the different ranks of swords experts. It starts with low level, then mid-level, after that is high level, and then finally, at the pinnacle, is the swordmaster. Lloyd says that Javier is on the verge of transitioning from a high-level sword expert to a swordmaster. The reason he can't sleep is because of his superhuman senses that have been sharpened to detect even the smallest of sounds or movements. Lloyd asks Javier if they have a deal or not. Javier reluctantly gives in and agrees to the deal. However, Javier teases Lloyd, saying that he has tried every remedy for insomnia known to man. But before he can finish his sentence, we see in the next panel, Javier absolutely knocked out on a chair. Lloyd says to himself that he is thankful for studying civil engineering. The method he used to make Javier sleep is simply by reciting passages from his reinforced concrete textbook. It's the next day, and Javier is looking fresh and new. He tells Lloyd to run 50 laps around the perimeter, and without complaining, he starts running, which surprises Javier. We can see Lloyd making a smart remark to Javier every time he goes around the perimeter. Lloyd starts to sweat from the physical exertion. However, he says that compared to his days working by himself in Korea, the running was an easy thing to do. We get a backstory of Lloyd of his life before he got transported to the book. He would wake up in a tiny boarding house every day, then he would spend all day carrying bricks up a 4-story building. And then to top it all off, he would spend all night by unloading truck deliveries, all just so he could survive. He held on to hope every day that things would get better. However, that day never came, and the light he held on to for so long seemed to get further and further away. So compared to that pain, running in a circle 50 times is nothing. Javier acknowledges Lloyd as a hard worker, and his approval rating goes up by 1, putting him at -28. He also gains 18 RP for improving a relationship with a key character. We are now inside the Baron's office, and we can see Newman talking to him. Lloyd's father says that he thought his son had come to his senses, but he misjudged him. He allows the duel to continue, but asks Newman that he doesn't hurt Lloyd too much and just teaches him a lesson. Newman agrees, but under his breath he says to himself that he can't wait to beat the brat up. He starts walking back and decides that he should just cut Lloyd's head off in the duel. That way his parents would freak out and give him a chance to kill them as well. He then finishes by saying that he could disguise it as a suicide. He thanks Lloyd for speeding up his plans of leaving the Baron's estate. It is now 1 month into the future. Lloyd and Newman are standing in front of each other, getting ready to duel. Newman asks Lloyd if he is ready to fight him. Lloyd kicks his shovel onto his back and cheekily says yes, he is ready to knock his lights out. Everyone is stunned by Lloyd's weapon of choice, and they start to question if he is even taking the duel seriously. Newman looks visibly annoyed, and he thinks he is being disrespected. The Baron covers his head in shame. He calls the duel a joke. Javier thinks to himself that it can't be a joke, because he remembers all of the training he made Lloyd do in the early hours of the morning. Running around the village teaching the villagers, engineers about the ondol in the afternoon, and then they finished every day with swordwork practice up until he went to sleep. Javier says that Lloyd is not playing a joke, and that he is more serious than ever. Lloyd's father starts the duel between Newman and Lloyd. Newman gets his sword ready, and Lloyd just awkwardly holds his shovel, almost as if he is about to go for a bunt. Javier is confused at Lloyd's stance. Newman lunges forward while telling him to take the duel seriously. Lloyd points the shovel towards the sword, and he deflects the first blow. Newman exclaims that luck doesn't happen twice and goes for another attack. Lloyd easily deflects this attack as well. Javier is stunned by his efficient movements. He says it's a skill adapted for real-life fighting, almost as if what Lloyd is doing now is a kind of swordsmanship that has had time to evolve through ages. Newman is confused as to why his attacks aren't affecting Lloyd at all. Lloyd thinks back to all the modern hand-to-hand combat and bayonet training he had to do in the army. Lloyd is now on the offensive and tries to go for a jab. He blocks an attack to the shoulder and tries to go for Newman's head. Lloyd tells Newman that he is now to perform the ultimate technique. In the next panel, we can see Lloyd using the shovel as a pogo stick. Bro, this dude is so unserious. Javier is now confused as to whether Lloyd is actually taking the duel seriously now, or if he is just playing around. Newman prepares to strike and goes for multiple attacks in quick succession. Lloyd takes each strike by deflecting it with his shovel. Newman calls Lloyd a bottle-loving lowlife and asks him where all this strength is coming from. Lloyd prepares another skill. He says it boosts all of his stats by 1 when he is holding a shovel. The +1 he got with Javier, and the +2 and +3 rating points he got from his parents by watching their son work hard for the first time in their life, got him enough RP to purchase an extension to his shoveling skill. Newman, feeling backed into a corner, breathed out slowly and tells himself that he was not expecting to need to use this, but no matter. He gathers all the mana around his body and centralizes it into his heart. Lloyd calls the skill Mana Heart. Newman exclaims that he is just getting started. Newman goes in for the kill, and Javier worries if Lloyd will be able to block the blow. For someone without any talent, it takes them 10 years to learn Mana Heart. For a regular swordsman, it takes at least 5 years to summon a Mana Heart. He says it would be impossible for Lloyd to block this attack with his shovel. Newman swings his sword down towards Lloyd. He gets his shovel ready. Newman calls him a fool as his blade will easily slice through his shovel, but Lloyd keeps his shovel above his shoulder and blocks the entirety of Newman's Mana Heart attack. We get reactions from his family members, Javier, and even Newman, who is more shocked than anyone. Newman's legs start to wobble, and Lloyd starts sucking the mana out of him using the 4th skill that he obtained. He thanks Javier for this one, calling it the mana conjuring skill that made Javier the strongest man in the world, the Astrahan core technique. Now that Newman is starting to buckle, Lloyd goes in for a swing and clocks him. Right on the right side of his face, we can see a tooth flying in the air. Geez, whatever kind of toothpaste Newman has been using, I need it. Lloyd continues with the barrage of attacks, now hitting him from the bottom of his jaw. Lloyd towers over Newman and finishes it off with a shovel straight to the back of his head. Newman falls onto the floor, defeated. Everyone watching is speechless. The Baron awkwardly announces the winner of the duel, Lloyd Frontera. Newman starts to question his life choices. He simply can't accept the fact that he lost to the low life of the estate. Lloyd stands over his opponent and says time for his beating. Newman looks up at him with terror in his eyes. His dad shouts at him, telling him the duel is over. But the hooligan Lloyd is back, and we can see him repeatedly whacking Newman with his shovel. 2 of the Baron's men run up and stop Master Lloyd from inflicting any more damage on Commander Newman. The Baron wonders if Lloyd has lost his mind. Javier says he does not know. Lloyd brushed the 2 men off and says he has calmed down. He takes a deep breath and then continues the beatdown. Javier looks at Lloyd carefully and sees that he is hitting Newman precisely to hurt every part of his body. His face is calm, as if he knows what's about to happen. Javier says it's almost as if Lloyd can predict the future. We get a flashback to 15 days before the duel, and Lloyd asks Javier if he can teach him the Astrahan technique. Javier stopped immediately and looked at him with a shocked expression. He asks Lloyd how he knows about that technique. At the point in the book that Lloyd is at currently, Javier has yet to even reveal to the world what the Astrahan method even is. Lloyd plays it off by saying he talks about it in his sleep when he puts him to bed with his lullabies. Javier gets the sense that he is lying, but there's no other way to explain how Lloyd knows about his developing technique, so he goes along with it. However, he says he cannot teach him the technique because it is not yet complete. Lloyd counters by saying that if he helps him complete it, he will teach him the technique. Javier agrees. He wonders why Lloyd looks and sounds so confident, almost as if he already knows the answer to perfect the technique. Lloyd begins to explain the technique and what Javier has been trying to do. He says that Javier has been trying to take the outside mana and then combine it with his Mana Heart with him. As a result, it bounces off. Lloyd mentions that rather, instead of mixing the mana into your Mana Heart, try condensing it separately, nearby. Almost like it's a small engine next to the main one, as if they are the same engine but also different parts. Javier wonders if this advice will help him. He asks him how he knows about everything he talked about. and Lloyd tries to blatantly lie and say he is just spitballing ideas that might not work, but Javier can recognize the face of a liar. While trying to do what Lloyd advised, Javier was able to finally complete the Azrahan technique, which he had been agonizing over for a long time. On the first try, he was able to get up to 3 mana circles, and with more training, Javier mentions he could even reach 4, 5, or even more circles. Javier's approval rating of Lloyd goes up by 5. With the deal that Lloyd and Javier made, Javier taught Lloyd a basic version of the Azrahan technique, which became the key to his success in the duel. We are back to the present and can see Lloyd's father screaming at him to stop beating up the commander. He says he won't tolerate him disrespecting Newman's honor as a knight any longer. "This knight's honor, my lord?" says Lloyd. He tells his dad to take a look under the tablecloth and then decide if his words are befitting of Sir Newman. A group of letters are seen hiding under the tablecloth. The Baron starts to read one and is shocked by what is written inside. Lloyd reveals that the letters are conversations from Sir Newman and Tordes, who is the man who defrauded the Baron in real estate. Lloyd's father starts shaking from the realization that he has been betrayed by one of his very own knights. Newman pipes up and says that he hid the letters in the wall. There was no way anyone could have found them. Lloyd grins to himself. Javier finds the letters later in the book, which explains why Lloyd knew where they were. He had Podong scamper around for the letters the night before the duel. The Baron looks depressed, and Lloyd commends his kind heart, as anyone else would be calling for Newman's head right about now. But a kind leader and a good leader are 2 completely different things. Lloyd suggests a punishment for Sir Newman. He says to drop a vicious mouse on top of Newman's head, but if he is hurt by the mouse, he must be exiled from the land. Otherwise, he can be demoted to a foot soldier and get the opportunity to repent. The Baron is stunned by his son's suggestion of giving him an opportunity to repent, with the awareness that he may be given a greater punishment at any time by giving him a test to pass. The Baron commends Lloyd for his smart intellect, as this suggestion is wise, generous, but also a warning to others. His father agrees, and Newman thanks the Baron for his mercy. He starts to mock the Baron under his breath for letting him get off scot-free, apart from having a measly rat be dropped on him. Lloyd knows that Sir Newman is smiling because he was able to get off basically scot-free, but he said he has a surprise. He gives Podong, who is resting on his shoulder, a red seed to make him grow. Lloyd yeets Podong into the air. He looks down on Newman and tells him to regret thanking him for mercy. The best way to ask for forgiveness is to remember that there is none. After Lloyd says those words, Podong eats the seed and grows in size. This shocks everyone in the arena. Podong starts descending and flattens Newman like a pancake. Lloyd points his finger in the air and says, "Exile." With this, the rotten apple of the land is now gone.